Mr. Rippey.
Don, what's going
You
on?
all right?
I'm making it.
There you go.
Yeah, I heard, Tom Rouse is supposed to.
Who?
Tom Rouse. This week.
We're good to go, Don.
Okay.
I just saw that on Facebook.
Let's go ahead and get the August 3rd, 2026 Tipton Utility Service Board meeting called to order. First item on the agenda, the minutes from the last meeting.
Move that be approved as submitted.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes as submitted. Any comments, questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
I
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Now we'll move to claims.
make a motion, we pay claims 28,180 through 28,227 for $356,035.62.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to pay claims as submitted. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
Okay.
We're up to you, sir.
Sent out the June financials, and everything looks in line. Year over year, we're in good shape, trending the right way, and then anticipate that the city council adopted our new water and sewer rates. 50% will go into effect September 1 here in a month, and the other 50% a year and a half from now, January 1, 2028. So we've been kind of treading water and sewer, no pun intended, and would look for that to slowly get better as the rate increase comes into play. So be glad to take any questions on financials.
You said 2028,
Yes, on the 50%.
January 28th.
Correct.
Yeah.
And then the availability and connection fees go in
Now.
January 1st of 27.
Got it. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
I do have a board resolution in front of you. We've been asked highly encouraged by IDEM to update our sewer use ordinance. It's been 5 years since we did that. And I engaged with Matt Smith of Strand Associates, and Matt's here tonight, and hit on a high level of the changes, which I sent out red lines to show you where all the changes were. I'll turn it over to Matt, please.
All right, thanks, Jim. So yeah, you've got a red line of the sewer use ordinance in front of you. A few things, this is a little new for the city and the utility. You have a sewer use ordinance that governs how, anybody connecting to the sewer, what they can put down the drain and all that. And that's especially important for your industrial users, of which you have 2 permitted industrial users, Park 100 Foods and Batesville Tool and Die, which used to be DC Coders. Part of your NPDES permit, which you get a new version of every 5 years from your wastewater plant, requires that this be reviewed in detail. Historically, IDEM hasn't really worried about it too much, and it was reviewed periodically when things like the West plant came online and that sort of thing. There's a newer person at IDEM that's a little more strict with things, 1, and then 2, we went through a process to figure out what the limits should have been at the old Stellantis facility if a new industry would have moved in there, and that kind of, I think, got us on the list for saying that this needed to be updated. As you'll go through, I would say the majority of the changes in here are pretty straightforward. One was we'd gotten rid of the separate limits for the west service area since it's all one wastewater treatment plant. IDEM said that needed to happen. Quite a few of them are just more or less grammatical errors, things that are cleaned up. There were some things on like fines for non-compliance, and that was basically the historical language had pretty much agreed with the Indiana Administrative Code. The revised language states it explicitly, so that was more cleanup stuff. There are a couple of things that that IDEM had recommended that at this time we're pushing back on. The first is that they had recommended adding criminal penalties to the sewer use ordinance for violation of it. Jim and I discussed that. It didn't really seem warranted. There's civil penalties in there. One, two, your industrial users have a permit through the state to discharge through you. Three, if they do things like forge documents or falsify evidence or whatever, I think there's, I'm not a lawyer, but yeah, there's other legal avenues for that sort of malfeasance. So that didn't seem to be necessary. And then the second thing was doing what's called a local limit study. Basically what that does is it determines how much of various pollutants, the capacity of various pollutants you can take out of your treatment plant, with the idea that then you would apportion out how much of each pollutant can come from the various industries. You only have 2 industries in town, and they discharge different types of pollutants. They're a food manufacturer that discharges predominantly biochemical oxygen demand and suspended solids. DC Coaters is a metal finisher that discharges things like cyanide and heavy metals. So they don't really, you don't need to really proportion them out between the two. This has been kind of a historical discussion too. It's been brought up before in both parties, both people like Scott Reeser and the guys that work at the wastewater plant or have worked at the wastewater plant, and Park 100 wanted to keep the limits the way they were. So we're recommending that. So that's the sewer use ordinance. There's a second document called the Enforcement Response Guide. So with what's called your industrial pretreatment program, which is how you deal with your 2 industrial users, you have to have an enforcement response guide, which basically says, okay, if you have a violation, what do you do? If you have a single violation, if you have multiple violations, and there were some things in the enforcement response guide that didn't match what was in the sewer use ordinance, and so the red lines in there are effectively cleaning that up, making it match the sewer use ordinance, and basically putting in what IDEM recommends as far as compliance schedules and termination of discharge and all that. So if anybody has any specific questions, I'm more than happy to answer them.
Anybody have any questions for Matt?
You said that there were some that we were pushing back on, so we're gonna go ahead and finalize these and then.
Yeah, so I think the intent is that the sewer use ordinance is actually approved by city council. So I think you guys are advising city council to take that, to make those changes. I think we're gonna hold off until we get the final okay from IDEM before we take it to city council. But,
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, if I can get this resolution complete tonight, then we can go through city council at such time.
Matt, how does Batesville capture that?
Cyanide.
Yeah.
So I've not been there, but I don't know. Generally what they have is they've got a tank that they'll add chemicals to that will basically bind the heavy metals and cyanide to it. And then and it turns it into a sludge that they have a industrial company come and take away.
Okay.
So that's generally how they work. I've not been specifically to their facility, but yeah, it's and that sort of like heavy metal type industry is pretty heavily regulated. So there's not a lot of, it's pretty defined what they have to do.
Yeah.
So.
And then Nick Huff from our pretreatment department, he checks on them, I know at least annually, maybe more often than that, has good rapport and checks their records. And
both of those industries have been here for a long time and have generally not had compliance issues. I mean, Park 100 has had some issues, but that's been when they've done startups and stuff like that. And I'm not aware of any with.
they have an occasional spill. They're very good at reporting, letting us know.
So,
Yep.
Thanks.
thank you.
Thank you, Matt. With that, do you want to go ahead and
Yeah.
cover the motion here? Do we have any other conversation about resolution 2026-01 in terms of the update of the sewer ordinance.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2026-01.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the resolution 2026-01 regarding the sewer use ordinance. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
Very good, thank you. A few other odds and ends to go over tonight. We did have safety training back on Wednesday, July 23rd, very well attended at the electric department. I did go to the IMPA Board of Commissioners meeting this past Friday. Shared what I thought was some good information with the board earlier today via an email. Just to recap, there was an article about the increased costs of power plant construction components across the board, across the globe, if you will. Some, if not a lot of that, is being driven by this demand from the data centers. And how do you capture those costs that don't get passed on to customers until years later through rate increases or whatever? That'll be interesting to see how they deal with that issue moving forward. But I'm aware that components for power plants are going up anywhere from 10 to 50%. The turbine generator companies' backlog is 5 years out. They're filling orders for 5 years from now, and there's just a big increase in demand on electricity. So I sent that information, and then I sent a short video, separate topic, with nuclear waste. I thought it was interesting. We all hear about it, and what are we going to do with it? And years ago, there were 3 places cited in the United States, and they dialed in on Yucca Mountain, Arizona or Nevada, wherever that is. And that's where they were going to store the waste, but the lawsuits came and went and nothing's happened. So there's still, nuclear waste being generated at these various power plants, and most of it's being stored at those sites. So they take the spent fuel rods and store them in what's called dry cask and just set them out. And they're good for, 50 to 100 years where they're sitting right now until they come up with a solution to store it. But one person at our meeting did a quick calculation of the amount of stored fuel. He thought it would be the footprint of a Walmart supercenter to store what we have on hand right now, which is not a small amount, but it's not thousands of acres either. So, and then the last thing I sent you, which is always encouraging, this little bar chart that reinforces what we've always said, that the IMPA member electrical rates are significantly less than those that are paying the investor-owned utilities like Duke Energy and NIPSCO and IPNL and you name it. And just the one that hits home for all of us is our residential rate. As you know, we've always said an average resident uses 1,000 kilowatts per hours per month, and our bills are, compared to others in the state of Indiana, over 30% less than their bills. So this is from their studies. So they did a lot of detailed work to get to those numbers. Always good to meet with our partners at IMPA, and I'm glad to bring stuff like this back to share with the board and the public. A couple things on the waterfront. I'm still waiting permission from the county RDC as to whether we can access their properties and potentially drill a test well or two. So immediately after the RDC meeting, I did engage with the county attorney, and I know he's working on it, and we'll get something sooner than later. So stand tight there. And then I also want to mention that Peerless Midwest, our well company here in Tipton, they maintain and test and do all kinds of good things with our 5 wells here in the city and our 3 wells out west. They did their annual preventative maintenance testing, and I'm pleased to report that everything checked out nicely. The pumps are running at more or less capacity, within 5% one way or the other on all the wells. And this year we decided is not a year we need to do a $50,000 revamp of any of the wells. So we're going to take a year off of that and we hope to do one every 10 years. We have 8 wells, so there's going to be a year here and there that we don't have to do one. That happens to be this year. So also, I guess on the waterfront, I wanted to share, most of you probably read or heard about some cybersecurity breaches up in Minnesota, and certainly got my attention after experiencing something along those lines a couple of years ago. So I reached out to our third-party vendor. I said, hey, we made some investments after our breach a couple of years ago. Based on what they've heard and read about what happened in Minnesota, are we in a good place? And the response was yes, after the upgrades we made, especially hooking the west plant to fiber optic. The other plants here in town are connected to fiber. And then we put some devices on some of the remote lift stations and various places to force communications through Parker, a VPN, a tunnel, so to speak. And I've shared it with Parker, some of the technical details. He already has some questions, so we're going to do some follow-up. But the initial response from the vendor was, we're in a good place. I mean, there's no guarantees. These guys are sophisticated people out there in the world that want to attack and expose us. So we just try to stay on our feet. Matt, I don't know if you've heard anything.
Yeah, we have a couple clients that we do. We don't really do IT consulting, but we do it, like kind of SCADA systems and how they relate and all that. And it's my understanding the people in Minnesota has very specific vulnerability, or at least, some utilities did, where you could get into their SCADA system from the internet more or less without it. It's I don't know what a firewall does really, but it's my understanding that, and I don't think it was just as simple as they didn't have a firewall, but it was something along those lines where, somebody remotely could, there was a path to get in there. And so, it's my understanding most of the people who have updated and, actively managed their IT systems have not had that problem, and that's why it was limited to 30 people in a specific, or 30 utilities in a specific state.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
I'm going to get some follow-up from Parker and some of his expertise, and
Very good.
I'm sure we'll drive some good conversations there. So thank you. On the wastewater front, besides the work Matt and his company's done with the sewer use ordinance, I've also asked Matt, I'm drafting a request for proposal from his firm to help us evaluate our blowers and clarifiers out of the East Treatment Plant. The blowers have anywhere from 15 to 25 years of age on them, and the clarifiers have anywhere from 25 to 45 years of age on them. So that's one of the investments we've kind of had our eye on. The steps would be, I'll get a proposal from Matt on what it would take to do the study, help us procure the equipment. Not sure how the installation would go. I feel like with my experience and the guys at the plant, we could procure the equipment on our own and avoid some markups from contractors, and then separately employ contractors to actually do the installation. They're very specific skill sets required, and that's kind of the path we're looking at now. That could change. I would say the timeline is engage with Matt and Strand sometime here in 2026, discuss procurement of materials in 2027, and the lead time on that stuff is anywhere from 26 to 52 weeks. So money spent is probably a year from now at the earliest. So,
I think that sounds correct.
Okay. So you owe me,
I know I do.
you owe me comments on the RFP. I want to get that right first.
Gotcha.
Thank you. And just a few other updates. We're still reviewing. I drove around after the last 1.5 inch rain we got to see how bad some places were. That place, the area by the library, I was going to push into next year, but I saw the water is standing there. There's a lot going on that we might want to address. But I also know the city is thinking about the next paving project in town, which is Independence Street, that covers the area we want to work on. So right now the plan is to include that work into their master program, and it would be at our cost to get that work done like we've done at the other places. But we're not ignoring it. We're just maybe pushing it out a little bit. So The ball fields, you might have noticed dugouts are going up. Well, you probably didn't notice, but the water line got installed last week. The guys put in like 500 foot of water line in a day, and then they pressure tested it, and they've got their back T test going on. So we're almost hooked up there, and we'll scratch that project off our list. Talking to Peter, we're still waiting on our former owner of the Swifty property to sign off on a variance. Believe that's in process, but haven't got the actual document back yet, so stay tuned there. New speedway out at Campbell. The building's up, the walls are up, starting to look like a convenience store, and they haven't touched our utilities yet. So we believe we're water and sewer are right there within 100 feet of the building, and they should, once they locate them, be able to hook in and have service. And then you might recall that's on the Duke Energy side for electricity. So we're out of the program there. West Plant filter bottoms. We did meet with a vendor out at the plant last Wednesday, a company called Baston Logan, who specializes in pressure filters and filter bottom repairs and whatnot. They brought 3 guys to the meeting and did a thorough review, and I'm waiting some feedback and budgetary and timeline type of information. And when I get that, I'll share with the board. Again, I think we're looking at 2027 investments, but 6-figure stuff for sure. And I believe that covers the things I have. We do this again in 2 weeks here. Are there any questions from the board?
No questions, comments?
So on the Swifty gas station one,
Yeah.
they actually agreed to a variance. It's just a matter of paperwork.
Verbally said that they didn't see any problem with it, and then Matt Quigley, our city attorney, drafted an actual legal document that we sent them that I thought was very straightforward, Peter.
Yep.
And
Okay.
explain what we wanted, and that's all we wanted, and yes.
Yep. Very good.
Anyone else? Matt, anything else?
Nope.
We appreciate your time this evening.
No problem.
With that, I guess I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
A motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We are adjourned.
Oh.